Right, so if you've been around gaming for any amount of time, you've probably heard the terms first person and third person. And there's an interesting question that comes up after you think about that for a while, and that is, what does a second person game look like? I'm going to be straightforward. I have already implemented what I think a second person perspective game already looks like, but I'm going to get into like why and how I approach like that idea of it. So first off, it kind of mostly comes down to a character and a camera disconnect. I'll show you an example in this video here. So you can see here, you're controlling the camera quite separately to how you're controlling the player right in front of you, like walking around, but it's not the camera which is walking around, it's the player right in front of you which is walking around. And that's quite bigly like a character and a camera disconnect. And then if you look at the next example, you can like then change where the camera is from and where you're controlling from. So there's also like multiple ways you can do this really. It's like multiple cameras controlling the same character from like different perspectives. Well, first off, those snippets you just saw, they're from a game that I've released. It's Mirrormind. Go check out the demo and go buy it if you enjoy it. Anyway, first off, third person and third person, that kind of like pretty obvious distinction comes down quite often to like the camera and the character. So quite often, well, they put projects on with, but quite often with a third person game, you have a camera and you have the character, and the character pulled back outside of the character. But where would the character runs around, the camera could be following them, and whenever you like turn around, the camera also like turn around. And that's very much the same like connection in a first person game, where you like turn around, the camera will turn around. If you walk forward, the camera will also walk forward. So it's very much that same camera and character connection going on there. Now, another example that it's kind of like in English, that when we speak with like pronouns, we use the word like I for like third person perspective. So we say like I go to the shop, I do the laundry, that kind of description. And then in third person perspective, we say they go to the shop, they do the laundry. But when it's second person, it's normally meant to be like more from like a command, like an overseeing kind of perspective. So like an instruction manual, like you put the two pieces of wood together, you prepare the cake that way, you know. It like very much like you do something. So this kind of also, you've already seen it already, but it kind of already happened with a camera. It's like commanding a character, it's saying you go over there, you go over there, you jump here, so on. You end up being like very much like from a very much like commanding the character. At least that's how I see a second person perspective. And that also pretty much means the camera and the character end up being like very much disconnected. There is kind of like an exception though, where the camera and the character end up being disconnected. And that's in like old Resident Evil games. And these are usually called fixed camera perspective games. You can very tenuously make the argument that it's a second person perspective game, and if you put a CCTV photo over the front of it, it could have been a second person perspective game from what I knew, but I think like kind of on the edge. An example of this like camera character disconnect that I'm talking about, it's an example here in my game. He'll like walk forward, walking around. You can see already like he's like walking and he's like controlling it, telling the other character to do something. And now he told that guy, you walk off the button, and he tells the told you to walk back on the button, walk back off the button, and tell him to move around. So very much with like camera and character disconnect. Spending quite a bit of time developing a second person perspective game, I thought there was like loads of opportunity for like new and interesting game ideas, but ultimately I thought there were like two costs, or two major costs to like making a second person perspective game. One of them, where you probably already felt one of them already a little bit, is that it's quite disorienting. Because in first person and third person perspectives, we have all this like practice, like playing them, not that's like not disorienting, but like when you disconnect them completely like that, it becomes quite disorienting. And then the other one is like often harder to implement. So any character controller you see on the internet for like any game engine, it's almost always going to be first person perspective or third person perspective. And then the second person perspective, maybe you'll find a couple for like fixed person perspective, but it's like normally not something you can easily translate over into second person perspective. And then in my case, also was like slightly harder to implement as well. That also allowed for players to be like rotated in different axes, so you'd have like people falling, and like gravity going that direction. That also meant I had to think, how do you walk forward? How do you walk left if the character is like separated, like rotated around in a different axis where it wouldn't like normally make sense? I don't know if that really came along pretty well, but there's also a couple other games I'm aware of that kind of do second person perspective. I told you like one example here. Nick Robinson did an excellent video, like showing Driver San Francisco as an example of second person perspective, mainly with like car chase where, you know, you're the chaser and you controlling the car in front of you. But he kind of more explored it, but like how you could break it. But either way, it was quite an interesting video. I would highly recommend watching that at some point. And then another example is the one from Jam to Go, and they kind of shown more exploring it through the eyes of like CCTV camera, like observing the player walking around and doing that kind of thing. But this kind of goes all the way back to what I was saying here, about being like fixed camera perspective games. It's already sort of its own idea, very much like separate second person perspective. So I feel like it's very much like not really second person perspective, but that's just how I feel about it. It doesn't really like play with the idea of like the second person. It kind of like just there for like implementation detail. There was another example I want to show. This is from a game No One Lives Under the Lighthouse, and this is like more within a horror theme. So I'll play it first and you can see what it's all about. Yeah. Creature chasing, you like seeing it from the perspective of the creature, and you're controlling the player running around. It did also run into the same issues that I had, which was that it is very disorienting, especially the first time that happens. But since it's a horror game, I think it kind of benefits a little bit from being disorienting like that, and it's really quite interesting and amazing when you see it for the first time. Like, it's kind of one of those like mind expanding moments, like, oh, that's how a second person perspective game could look like. Personally, I think second person perspective is like a really cool idea. It does feel like it kind of doomed gimmicks and experimental games. So anyway, thanks for watching me talk and ramble a little bit about second person perspective games. Check out Mirrormind if you'd like to. Link will be in the description. Subscribe, like, comment, and cheers. Have a good one.